It is Tuesday, 26th of November, 2024. Welcome to the God 12 video. Wow, how time flies when you're not having fun. Can't believe I've been doing this for almost 12 months. It's been roughly one video per year. Started it in January 24. It was all completely spontaneous, unplanned, just the way I was feeling about things at that point in my life. It's been a long journey. I've learned a lot myself from a lot of the research I've been doing, from a lot of the correspondence I've been getting from people along the way. And it really seems to have resonated with many people out there. I've had a lot of very positive feedback. People have shared their stories and their experiences. And I have a few more of those in the mailbag section towards the end of this video, where I'll read out some of the correspondence that people have been sending in by email or by dropping comments below the various video channels. Just want to mention that I've got a new YouTube channel to house all these God talks, and I'm calling it, appropriately enough, Mark Devlin God Talks. So this is separate from my main YouTube channel, which is where I've been running these videos, and I'm going to be taking them down from that original YouTube channel, which I want to remain there for my music research and other aspects of my work. So the God stuff is going to be housed exclusively on this new channel. So if you're watching this on BitChute, Odyssey, or Rumble, then may I ask you, if you're a YouTube user, to head on over to the Mark Devlin God Talks YouTube channel and subscribe there. Just trying to build up the subscriber base and get some comments and some correspondence and some interaction going. So that's on YouTube. If you're watching this on that YouTube channel and you've not yet subscribed, may I ask kindly if you could do that? It just helps the channel to grow and helps to keep things ticking along. So I had a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share in this video. One is related to the true nature of this construct, whatever it may be. And I've got my ideas on that, many of which I've shared on these videos and on various shows that I've appeared on this year. And an analogy came to me while I was out driving the other day. I have all my best thoughts and all my best downloads, it seems, when I'm out on the road. I can really gather my thoughts while I'm driving. I do concentrate on the road from time to time as well, you understand. But I was thinking about the old days of me being a DJ. I've got this reissued version of my first book, Tales from the Flip Side, which I originally self-published in January 2007. And that was at the time when I was still very much in a normie state of mind, a mainstream way of seeing the world. I didn't realize then that secret societies and psychopaths and Satanists actually run the world. I thought it was governments. How naive was I? But anyway, this was at the point in my life where I was traveling around as a DJ, playing gigs all over the place, fortunate enough to travel widely, meet a whole bunch of people, played a whole bunch of gigs. And I thought at the time, that's all life really consists of. That is the meaning of life. Never mind what Monty Python say. As far as I was concerned, the meaning of life was tunes, parties, gigs, travel, chasing girls, that sort of thing. So imagine my surprise when I came to realize that governments don't actually run the world, and I had to reevaluate my entire worldview. And that's what set me on the path to publishing my musical truth books and all my music industry research. And I thought it'd be interesting to put out an 18th anniversary version of this first book, which is kind of like my forgotten work, if you like, that not many people know about. So that is going to be the next book out, and it's going to be out in a matter of days on Amazon, but also you can get copies from me directly. And it comes with a new foreword and new footnotes throughout, which give my insights at this point in my life, my perspective on things, picking up on comments that I made back in the day and framing it in a contemporary sort of context. So as I was thinking about all of this, I was transported in my mind to that point in my life. And back then, it was prior to the transition into digital, electronic ways of doing things as far as the technology was concerned. So it was the dying days of analog technology. And when I first started out in the radio business and then got into DJing, everything was still analog. This was in the early 90s. So in the radio station, entire shows and all the ads and all the jingles were on reels of tape, quarter-inch tape, and these little shells, which were called cartridges, which contained a loop of this tape. And it was completely analog, so the recording would be imprinted on the magnetic tape, and you would edit using a razor blade and a little bit of splicing tape. If you wanted to take something out of a recording, you would literally slice out the tape that it's on, pull the tape out, throw it away, and then splice up the two ends with the tape, the splicing tape, to put it all back together again. So it's everything we now do on computers, but back then you had to do it hands-on, manually. Then I was thinking about how we used to record radio shows. So these days, you probably get a download, a podcast, or a listen again link, and you can get it as an MP3 or a WAV or some other audio file. But back in the day, if you wanted to listen to your favorite radio DJ on your local FM station, it wasn't put out on the internet because this was prior to the internet having gained prominence. So it was on FM radio waves, actual radio going through the atmosphere. And so if you're at home and you wanted to record your favorite radio DJ, you had to do it on a cassette. So a cassette was like a mini version of that quarter-inch tape that was used professionally in recording studios and radio stations. So those of us of a certain age will doubtless recall recording probably the top 40 on a Sunday evening on a cassette, and some of us might still have boxes of these cassettes knocking about in the garage. I certainly do. And it just got me thinking about the contrast between that way of doing things and the way society now is, completely governed by digital electronic technology. And the thing about when you would record something onto magnetic tape is that would be a faithful rendering of that recording. So whether it was voice work, whether it was music, you would imprint the sound onto the magnetic tape. And that was the sound. With digital recordings full of ones and zeros, these are not actual recordings. They're not actual, accurate renderings of what was said or what was performed. It's a digital interpretation of them. It's synthetic. It's a construct. So I'm recording my voice now, for example, onto a computer. When I play that recording back, it won't be my voice. It will be the computer's interpretation of what my voice sounded like based on the frequencies. And these get converted into a digital approximation of what was originally there. And so I got to thinking, isn't that a brilliant metaphor for what we appear to have with this reality in which we find ourselves? So if we accept that this place is some sort of simulation, some sort of virtual reality type, computer game type scenario made up of ones and zeros, a digital matrix, if you will, then we are not living in actual reality. In the same way that a digital recording is not an actual rendering of what really went on. It's an interpretation of it. It's a bastardized version, or an overlay, if you like. So what if we are in some sort of 3D holographic virtual reality simulation full of computer code, which is what I now take this place to be? It's coded. That's why we get things like synchronicities, apparently meaningful coincidences, synchromysticism. All of these phenomena can be easily explained if you accept that this reality, the building blocks of it, is made up of computer-style coding. So when these things occur, and when people and places and situations are drawn together in seemingly miraculous ways, there's nothing miraculous about it when you consider the rules that have been built into this construct, the coding put into place by the architect, the designer of this computer game. So I think we've got a really great analogy there, and we're really lucky these days, and we've got the technology to provide metaphorical explanations for the reality that we're living in. So we're living in a sort of CD, computer, hard disk, electronic digital version of reality. And maybe there was an original version of reality, this realm, which was more akin to analog technology. So it was original and it was authentic. And by whatever means, for whatever reason, we are now in a bastardized, reimagined overlay of what was originally there, which we might term original creation. Maybe there's something to that. That thought was one which came to me in the last few days. Wanted to share it in this video. The other one forms the title of this video, Conscience as a Curse. So I've mentioned in previous videos that we have this kind of fail-safe mechanism built into us, those of us that aren't psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, regular people, most people. It's called a conscience, and it prevents us from doing what we know to be wrong. So most of us don't run around rampaging, committing murder, rape, theft, violating other people's rights, trying to take other people's property away, because instinctively, inherently, we know that it's wrong to do so. We wouldn't want it done to us, so we don't do it to others. That's the golden rule, always has been. Do not treat others in a way you would not wish to be treated yourself. And we see this as a virtue. I certainly have. It prevents us from becoming psychopaths. It's what makes us want to help others if we can. It's what gives us our sense of compassion, empathy towards others, and our sense of care. We care about things, most of us. But what if it's not really a virtue in this construct, in this reality? Because it would appear that having a propensity towards doing what you know to be right, to be morally sound, to be ethical, can actually work against you in this realm in which we find ourselves, for whatever reason. Because, again, to reinforce this well-labored point, we don't know why we're here. We don't know what this place is. We don't know how we got here or where we're going. We don't know what created it, to what end, and we have no roadmap through life other than our consciences, which guide us towards behaviors which we inherently know to be right and away from behaviors which we inherently know to be wrong. So the so-called elites, the controllers of organized society, would appear to have a pretty good handle on this dynamic, and they've got a rather different take on it. So as far as they're concerned, a conscience is something which holds you back and is going to cause all kinds of problems and all kinds of suffering and hardship for you in this realm. On the other hand, in a place which evidence shows us has clearly been constructed to facilitate fear, pain, suffering, trauma, if you're someone who aligns yourself with behaviors that bring those states around, you're going to thrive and flourish and probably have a really great time as you navigate your life through this realm. This would explain a lot, wouldn't it? It would explain why the so-called elites engage in the type of activities that they do, right the way down to the most heinous ones of all, involving children and all of that. Like the most evil acts a human can possibly engage in. They do this. They obviously don't feel that they're going to reap any form of karmic judgment or punishment for engaging in these activities. On the contrary, they seem to feel that this is the way to act if you want to get ahead and live relatively trouble-free in this realm. So maybe the so-called elites, the controllers, are effectively doing the bidding of whatever force created this realm. Call it Yaldabaoth, call it Yahweh, call it Satan, call it what you will. We've discussed this many times in previous videos. So maybe conscience can be viewed as a curse in this regard, because if you care, if you give a shit, if you exercise compassion and empathy towards others, other living sentient beings beyond just humans, you're going to have a pretty traumatic time here, aren't you? If we're honest. Because it's our care that causes our suffering. If we didn't give a shit, we wouldn't suffer. Not to this degree, anyway. So conscience might be viewed as a curse within that regard. Does this mean I'm saying then that we should all become like the elites and run around abusing everyone else and taking away their rights? Absolutely not. I still maintain that because we know the difference between right and wrong, because we have these consciences, we should let them guide us towards right action. So we don't really know what lies beyond this realm when we exit here. We don't know if it's trickery, deception, and duplicity all the way. We don't know if there's any kind of judgment. We don't know if we effectively judge ourselves. We don't know if we maintain our inherent sovereign ability to decide for ourselves where we go and what we experience once these lives are up. And because we don't know, I maintain that we should continue to live according to what we know to be right action. And you might say, well, that's going to bring more suffering and more hardship in our lives, as is self-evident. The more you care, the more you suffer. But it's still the right way to live. And just imagine what this realm would be like if everyone was running around committing murder and rape and rampage and, theft, just doing whatever they want. Just imagine how literally hellish that would be. It's the failsafe of the human conscience that has prevented society from falling that low throughout human history. So at this point, I want to jump to the metaphorical mailbag. And I've had a couple of pieces of correspondence which synchronistically or not, computer codingly, tie in with this message, the conscience as a curse idea. So let me just jump to these. Somebody has written in to say, you asked the question, why is the original creator God allowing all this suffering to happen? And it gave me an idea. Why do we suffer? We suffer mainly because we care. So we're in a realm where countless animals are torn apart limb from limb every day. It's a conveyor belt of bloodshed. Nature being destroyed or our family and friends dying around us mainly causes us to suffer because we care. Which makes me think, what kind of creator God wires us up for compassion and then abandons or willfully leaves us inside a system that is the equivalent of a giant meat grinder constantly needing to be fed? The obvious answer would surely be to actively create suffering. Is it beyond the bounds to speculate that we were created by something evil, something that actively wants us to suffer in this realm? We're created in such a way to produce this suffering energy. Then somebody else wrote in, pretty much at the same time, to say this. So people have used feelings around 1, family, friends, and community, 2, nature, and 3, conscientiousness as possible evidence of a benevolent God. But who do these things actually benefit? So, number 1, the whole thing, with us having positive feelings towards our family and friends and community, is surely only a programmed, hardwired in animal response. Most animals, certainly mammals, defend their young, are often found in packs, and birds of a feather flock together. The reproductive urge and everything around it in mammals is surely nothing more than the architects of this realm ensuring that things tick over. Number 2, similarly, our positive feelings of being at home in nature is nothing more than an animal response to feeling at home in a particular environment. This could be the Scottish Highlands or on a beach in the Med or whatever. A person running a terrarium or a zoo would naturally find suitable animals to inhabit it and then design and tailor the environment to suit each species. This ultimately suits the system to keep it going and keep people in the game. Number 3, this person says, you yourself have used conscientiousness as possible evidence for a benevolent God. But any conscientiousness we have is largely programmed and then used against us. It could be argued that our conscientiousness is what's keeping us in this suffering pit of hell, because us affecting any genuine radical change would be outside the bounds of our largely programmed conscientiousness. It seems once again that the system benefits from our conscientiousness, as it's yet another thing that keeps us in place. I'll jump to the next email here. Somebody's written in to say, synchronicity? Synchro-mystical experience? No, it's the Matrix. I live in New Jersey, in the United States, and at the listening of your most recent podcast, number 11, I have to tell you this. Last night, I listened to Janice Barcelo's interview on Freeman Fly. It was an old interview from his archives, and it was so compelling that I did a revisit last night. While I was listening to her, I kept seeing in my mind's eye the scene from Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, where Michael Palin and Terry Jones, cross-dressed as his wife, and their thousands of kids in a house, with Michael Palin singing that every sperm was sacred. I woke this morning with the same scene in my mind again, and the Monty Python opening with scrolling tulips and the stomping foot, and then I tune in to your episode 11 video, and need I say more? God 11, of course, is the one where I analysed Monty Python's The Meaning of Life movie, and what those guys must have known about what this place really is. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that this is a worldwide connection. And I've found you to be one of the very few key people in my life that's woken me up. And I think it's amazing and yet telling how the technology works. Just wanted to let you know that everything you said in that video rang true and demonstrated itself right here across the saline pond. So many thanks for that one. And I'm just going to round off the mailbag feature here with one more message, which is a bit more upbeat in tone, you might say, than the previous ones. And this person is obviously trying to put a bit of a positive slant on many of the topics that we've been discussing here. So the thing is, if everything was roses and butterflies, then we would just find life boring. The fact that most suffer hardship actually drives us to think there must be more than this life. It is that suffering and mortality that adds value to existing. If you were immortal and had no hardship or suffering, where would the value come from? It's a yin-yang, as with everything else. There's a good, there's an evil, there's a positive, there's a negative, there's strength, there's weakness, there's truth, and there's lies. There's hardship and suffering, and then there's bliss and joy. The one cannot exist without the other. That is the coding of this reality? Well, I agree to a certain degree, but I would remind viewers of a point that was made by Eric Dubay in the conversation that I had with him earlier this year, around about March, I think, where he pointed out that if everything really were yin and yang, dualities, then wouldn't we find things more in balance in nature and in these lives? So wouldn't there be just as much joy, euphoria, bliss, happiness, love as there is suffering, hardship, trauma, fear? If we think about what people go through in traumatic situations, people that have been inducted into satanic ritual abuse, that have been born into one of those families, people that have been subjected to horrific trauma-based mind control techniques, people that live in war zones, people that have been the victims of all kinds of horrific activity, can that degree of suffering be balanced out by any degree of joy? So Eric made the point that nobody in their right mind would trade 1 minute of the worst possible torture that could be inflicted on a human for 1 minute of the most wonderful euphoric bliss of their choice. You just wouldn't do it, because the torture would be so horrific that nobody would want to undergo that, no matter what prize might wait at the end of it for them, because it doesn't balance things out. Things aren't equal in that way. The suffering and the fear always outweighs the joy and the happiness. Things are unfairly weighted in that direction in this realm. And just a final quote to end on, going back to the idea of conscience as a curse, and the idea that the fact that we have a conscience indicates that this place is not our natural home. We don't belong here. We clearly come from somewhere else. And this is what so many of us yearn to get back to. We don't belong here. I'm reminded of the Whitney Houston lyric from her song, Your Love Is My Love, where she says, if I should die this very day, don't cry, because on earth we wasn't meant to stay. And I just want to end on this famous quote from Krishnamurti, Jiddu Krishnamurti, who famously said, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. This is that profoundly sick society, made up of ones and zeros, computer coding, and no wonder many of us are so badly adjusted to it. I'm going to finish off now with a clip from a movie. I won't be able to include this on the YouTube version, so if you're watching this on my YouTube, please hop over to the Odyssey, the BitChute, or the Rumble to view it. And it's from a movie from 1991, starring Albert Brooks, who also wrote it, and Meryl Streep. It's called Defending Your Life. It's a kind of goofy comedy, and it really reinforces the idea of the soul trap, and the idea that when we leave here and go to the astral realm, we're met by beings, archons, if you will, who cloak themselves in various disguises and try and convince us that we've got unresolved issues that we didn't sort out in these lives, and therefore we need to reincarnate, come back, and work them through all over again. What I find so interesting about this particular clip that we'll see is that when the guy who's judging the newly arrived guy in the astral who's just died, when he's assessing his life, he's looking at this bit of paper and it's a printout of ones and zeros, digital code. So what did the makers of this movie know back in 1991? Seems they were putting the truth in this goofy oddball comedy way back then, 33 years ago. So take a look at this one. And just a reminder that it would really help me out if people would subscribe to this new God Talks YouTube channel. Just really trying to build up those numbers and get some traction on the videos and get these ideas out there as widely as possible. And to keep them all in one place, it makes sense not to pepper them around with all the music industry stuff. So thanks for watching. This was God 12. It's probably the last one I'll do in 2024. So I'll be back in 25, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a bit of a wild roller coaster of a year, and we're going to discover many things along the way. So let's do that together. Thanks for watching. Cheers.